WshShell. The WshShell object is another object that you'll use frequently in your scripts. It allows you to gain access to things like the Windows registry, running external programs, pop-up dialog boxes, sending keystrokes to applications, writing to the Windows event logs, and many other things. Now, like with our file system object we saw in the previous video, accessing the WshShell is almost exactly the same. We simply need to use set to create the interface to WScript.shell. Okay, so let's go and take a look at how we can use the WshShell object in our VBScript. So in this example here, we're going to look at two things we haven't yet seen in our scripts, the pop-up method and the select case statement. Okay, as per normal on the first line of our script, we've declared our variables and then we've set the interface to the shell on our second line here. Now on the third line here, we've used the pop-up method, which we haven't yet seen, which is going to produce a pop-up dialog box with a yes and a no button. In this pop-up box, we've simply asked the user a question: is your name Bob? Now the number 7 here after this question is simply the number of seconds that we'll be prepared to wait before our pop-up dialog box times out and we can continue on with our script without bothering to wait for the answer. Now next, we've set the title bar to be answer this question, and finally over here on the right we've used the values of 4 and 32. And if you come down here and take a look at the comments I've provided at the bottom of this script, the number 4 over here is simply going to provide the yes and no buttons, and the number 32 is simply going to display a question mark icon. Alright, well next here we've used a select case statement. Now a select case statement is a lot like an if-then statement as far as its usage goes, but it's a lot more powerful. And personally, I think if you have more than 2 or 3 items that you need to make a decision for, then you should use select case rather than an if-then statement. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so here we've created our select case statement and we've assigned this to our button code variable, which of course will hold the pop-up dialog box. So what's really happening here is that whatever is happening with our pop-up dialog box is being fed into our select case statement for further evaluation. So let's take a look at what it's going to do. Now the first line here says case 6 and then uses WScript.echo to display this line of text. Now the next line here says case 7 and also uses WScript to echo out this text. But the next line here says -1 and again displays some more text. But where are these numbers 6, 7 and -1 coming from? Well, again, if you come down here and look at the comments that I've provided below for your reference, these values are coming from over here on the right-hand side column here, which are the exit codes that VBScript produces when you click the buttons in a pop-up dialog box. So we can see here that the yes button will exit with the value of 6. The no button exits with the value of 7. And if nothing's pressed at all in our pop-up dialog box, by the time our pop-up box times out, as indicated up here by our number 7, which is 7 seconds that we set in our script, then the dialog box is going to exit with the value of -1. So back up here to our case statement, if a user clicks on the yes button, then the value of our button code variable is going to be 6, and that will trigger the case 6 line and simply show this text here. Now if the user clicks the no button, then the value of button code will be 7. So that of course is going to trigger our case 7 statement, which is going to result in this text being displayed. And finally, if the user does nothing at all, the pop-up box is going to time out and the value of the button code will be -1, so that's going to trigger our case -1 line, and then it's going to show this text here. So using select case is a much better way of doing things. Now although we only have 3 choices here, well, we actually have 2 choices and a default behavior. Imagine that you have a script that offers the users 5, 10 or more choices to do something. Now if you use an if-then statement for that, whilst you can do it, it's really messy, and trust me, you'll find the select case statement much easier and better to learn in the long run. Now one final thing to point out here is that when you use select case, you can also use a case else statement at the end, just before our end select statement here. And this is used to put in a catch-all case. That way, if none of your case conditions match, you have a default exit strategy. Now in my situation here, I know that my -1 statement will be my catch statement just in case the user doesn't click anything. But if you've set a case statement to gather people's names, for example, and you've specified case Bob and case Jack, and along comes Joe who isn't listed, if he enters his name as Joe, then his name won't match anything in your select case statement. So by creating a case else line at the bottom, you can then provide some code to deal with people other than Bob or Jack who might be running your script. Oh, and like with our variables, numbers like you see here in our case statement don't need quotes, but a name like Bob, Jack or Joe will need to be entered in quotes. And also, like with our variables, you can use more than one case condition on the same line. So if I just pop in a new line here, we could enter in something like this. So if the value in our string happens to be either Jack or Joe, then this line will match. Of course, if it's 6, 7 or nothing else, then the other lines are going to match. Alright, well, I'm just going to remove this line here altogether and I'll just save my script again. And let's go and run our script anyway. So we'll go to the command prompt and we'll run popup.vbs. Okay, it's asked us if our name is Bob, so I'm just going to click yes. And of course, there's the text that we chose to display if the yes button was clicked, which of course was our case 6 statement. So we'll run it again. This time I'll say no, my name is not Bob. And the text assigned to our no button, in this case the case 7 statement, has been displayed. And finally we'll run it one more time. And this time I won't click anything, we'll just wait 7 seconds for our script to time out on its own. Alright, and there you go. So now our button code variable is passed the value of -1 as nothing was clicked, and our script just timed out, so our case -1 statement executes, and of course there's the text. Okay, well let's move on and we'll take another look at another example of what we can do with the WshShell object. Alright, in this example we'll see how we can use VBScript to access the Windows registry. Now before we start mucking around with the Windows registry, a word of warning: any changes you make to the registry will be permanent, so when practicing your scripts, don't do this on a live production machine, or you just might find yourself being in a spot of bother if you got something wrong. Now always test out your scripts, especially scripts where you might write or delete items from the registry first on a test machine, and then only run them on a production one once you've thoroughly tested that it works fine. Okay, well, at the top of this script here, we've declared our variables. And we have the first one here for the interface to our WshShell, and the other 5 are going to be used to hold values relating to our registry. Now on the next 5 lines here, we've set our variables to be literals by directly assigning values to them. On these first 3 lines here, we've defined registry keys that we want to pull values from. Now I will point out ahead of time that these values I've just placed in the quotes here must be typed in exactly as they appear in the Windows registry. So if the value of default username, like you see here, doesn't have any spaces in it when you look at the Windows registry, then that's how you should enter it into your script. Now on the next 2 lines, I've created 2 more literals that provide the path to the registry, and since I chose to pull out values from different sections of the Windows registry, I've had to define 2 different paths here. Okay, on the next 3 lines is where we'll be reading in the values from the registry. So on the first line here, string domain name, we've used the regRead function and we've passed it the value of string winlogon and string domain name. And if we have a look a little bit higher up our string here, we can see that winlogon points to this registry path. And of course our string domain name is looking for this value here of default domain name. So this line down here is simply passing to the regRead function a string called hkey local machine software Microsoft Windows NT current version winlogon followed by default domain name, and then it's going to get back whatever value stored there. Okay, and this is exactly the same procedure that we see for the next 2 lines here. We're using regRead to get the host name of this server by using str hostname, which of course is this registry path here, along with server name, which is simply going to pull the hostname value out of the registry. Now finally down the bottom here, we're going to use WScript.echo to display back to us what it found. And since this is a rather long line of code, I've simply used the underscore character here at the end of each line to tell VBScript that the line of code does continue on the next couple of lines.